Trending with the Tribune presents Part 2 with the Chancellor of Vanderbilt University, Nicholas Zeppos.
As we look at the current environment in the country today, some people would argue that we appear to be going backward in terms of our civility. What's your take on that? Yeah. Is civility suffering?
You know, it's impossible for me to say it's not. And I have a lot of people tell me it's because of, you know, the social media and the 24-hour news cycle, and you know, obviously, you know, when I do the work that I try to do, is I try to kind of say, well, here are the values, here's the tone that we're going to have, and you know, certainly at Vanderbilt, you know, I'll have wonderful students who will tell me what they think. They will give me petitions. They will protest. They will, you know, do a sit down in my office building. But I also say, you know, and I know the history of Nashville enough to say that's sometimes how change comes. That's what Diane Nash did.
Yeah.
That's what Jim Lawson did.
Yeah.
That's what James Bevel did. I mean, but yet I also say what we have is so much diversity that we can learn from the differences and kind of hang in there. That, you know, you might have a viewpoint, but you're going to be in a classroom, or you're going to be living in a residence hall, you're working in a laboratory. And, you know, we're going to talk about these tough issues. Now, it's not easy. You know, I'll take an example. You know, the whole question of evolution is controversial.
Yeah.
And, you know, and
it's a very much Tennessee topic.
Yeah, and it's, you know, we don't have to go very far to kind of think of the Scopes trial.
Right.
But, you know, I have a physics professor who will start out the class. And he's going to say, okay, I'm going to tell you that the universe is about 15 billion years old. And so how do we, as a community, square that with what some of you might think otherwise for very legitimate reasons? And so I think that sort of sustained dialogue in an educational institution is very much what I think is important about what Vanderbilt does, what TSU does, what Belmont does, what Fisk does, you know, what all the schools do. We have the advantage that we're in dialogue. I mean, I just came back from a small presentation about, you know, the preservation of records on the slave trade. And, you know, there are all these records in Madeira and Cape Verde, throughout the world on the slave trade.
Yeah.
And so, God, you know, we have to talk about this. We have to talk about, you know, who played the role, why are these records there, and then how do we preserve it so we can really talk about how did this happen?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and who was involved, and, you know, who's complicit, and so I think we have to kind of find voice and engagement, but civility on the campus, and I worry very much about that in our civil society. I just, you know, democracy has to have some give and take where I listen to you and you listen to me, and maybe I'll actually change my mind. And but at the same time, it's, you know, interesting, we have all these discussions about college campuses and free speech, and, well, I have free speech on my campus, but, you know, I also think you just got to say there's no room for bigotry, there's no room for, you know, people, you know, hate speech and people using symbols and images and words of hatred. And so, you know, I think free speech is important, but yet our work is, you know, it's really interesting. I was rereading Du Bois, and he kind of talks about what liberal arts education is. And I just, I was like, he's like, this is how we're gonna become citizens.
Yeah.
Because we're gonna be part of, we don't wanna be working in maybe that field, but because we wanna be part of the process of governance. And so I think that's really how I try to think of Vanderbilt, which is like, we're gonna train leaders to go out into the world and they're gonna be involved in discussions that require listening and reasoned debate and, tightly hewing to the facts. I mean, we're a research institution and we have some really smart students, we've got great faculty, superb staff.
Mm-hmm.
And if you say up is down,
Yeah.
there's room for it, but you better get ready to, to say
Yeah.
why is up down.
Yeah. Illuminate. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've actually wanted to talk to the other presidents, and I know, other schools are working on it, but, kind of how do we foster dialogue and civil engagement, but without necessarily taking away, people have legitimate protests
Yeah.
and grievance, and so, but I worry about it. The other thing though that I think we have to be careful of is, and I kind of really love history, but, and I talk to my students about this, but, I know we have good discussions, but, we have to realize, a really painful, at points, violent history of America
Yeah.
that occurred in my lifetime.
Yeah.
And, and so, I'll have, even some very informed people, even on my board will say, well, this is really the civil strife we're seeing, and this is before Charlottesville, so this is really, unprecedented. And I'm like, you think this is unprecedented? Where were you in 1965? Where were you in Go see this movie, Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is, I worry that we so magnify that we deny our past.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That
yeah.
was, and you were on the front lines.
Yeah.
And then we kind of say, this is so hard it can't be done. And I worry about that sort of ahistorical claim that, oh, look at this is just, this is impossible. And I'm like, well, yeah, it really is hard. Israel always been hard. And it was maybe it's harder now, I don't know, but, tell that to, Medgar Evers.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there's a real part of our history that when we say, well, this recent, horrible series of events in Charlottesville, and people are like, where's that? And I'm like, oh, this is really bad. It's like, well, where'd that come from? And I'm like, oh, where'd that come from? You can watch a Walter Cronkite show.
Yeah.
I mean, just it's in my lifetime.
And I think Vanderbilt has all the Cronkite.
Oh yeah, I've got all of those.
archives,
That's
yeah.
why I think working on some sort of center on, civil rights and race and, I don't, just getting the schools together. I mean, Fisk, had a phenomenal, race relations program. And, I don't want to put anything before the new president until he's ready, but that's the sort of thing where, we can contextualize the struggle, contextualize the history, explain, currents and threads that are in American history. So that's an area where I think Nashville has a really, really great opportunity with all the schools here.
Now, let's say that you got a call from Washington and they want you to come to Washington and be a chief of higher education, a chief of education. What would you do in that job? Given the fact that Congress doesn't want to spend any money.
Well, that's going to change. Yeah.
There are a lot of balls at play
Yeah.
that make even that job
Yeah.
tough, all you're trying to set up.
Oh, yeah, I've joked with people. I said, you know, if they call me for the Chief Justice and I were confirmable, I don't think it's gonna happen, and I kinda like the job I have now.
Yeah,
But, you know, what I think, and I've talked to politicians about, not that they should listen to me, but I think America needs a Marshall Plan on education, higher education. And I think we've gotta look at all of these great schools and say, I mean, I'm biased, I don't know, but our greatest institutions are our colleges and universities.
liberal
Yeah.
arts or
All of them. We have more colleges and universities. We've got liberal arts schools like, you know, Fisk and Sewanee and Hendrix College, and that do research, and you know, and then we've got big public research universities like Tennessee or Michigan, and then we've got privates like, you know, Johns Hopkins and Vanderbilt. You travel around the country, they want a car, they can make the car.
yeah,
They want a watch, they can buy the watch. They don't have these institutions. I mean, you look at the top universities in America, it's like, you know, like Great Britain, Germany, France, Japan, Italy, Spain, you know, maybe China now, India, but we're, you know, yeah, I mean, we are, that's our dominant industry.
yeah.
I mean, it's like, you know, some rich person wants to buy part of JP Morgan, they got JP Morgan.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, can they create these schools? No. And they're not easy to do. So I think America needs to sit down and say, God, we've degraded, first of all, we've degraded these public universities. I'm K through law school public education.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I'm not an expert on K-12, but, you know, it's kind of like I think four of the top 20 universities in the world are University of California schools.
Really?
Oh, yeah. So you're gonna degrade those? That's not a national, now I get it's California schools, but we need a Marshall Plan. And we need to set goals, and we need to say, you know, I get the vocational training, and I commend, you know, any other ideas, and I think what the governor's been doing here, and they just did in Rhode Island, is, yeah, start with community college, make
Oh, yeah,
college affordable.
Yeah,
I went to college for, I think, $500 a year.
yeah. Well, that wasn't last century.
Yeah, well, it was, literally. But I think we need a major investment in research, education, infrastructure. I mean, you just look at our residence halls and public universities, our research labs and universities. We need to just say, that's a priority. That must be a priority. And that would be my first thing, and I'd say to all these, you know, I tell people, I said, the American dream, it's gotta be a reality. The American dream runs down two streets, Main Street and University Avenue.
Very good point.
That's it. And so we just go around and say, you know, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Michigan, Wisconsin, Utah, build up these universities. That's what, and it's really interesting. It's, you know, Abraham Lincoln, when he wasn't leading the nation during our horrible Civil War, they passed the Morrill Act to create land-grant colleges. He did the Transcontinental Railroad.
Yeah.
And, you know, for better or for worse, they had the first income tax and the national banking system. Where's that spirit?
That's true.
And he's fighting a civil war, the ugliest war over slavery, and he's like, well, maybe there's some other things to do. So that'd be the one thing I would do, is to just say, we need a massive investment program. And that would be my passion. And, you know, I'd say, you know, I get that they say, well, not everyone should go to college. And,
What's your response to that?
well, my response is, your kid going to college?
Yes.
Yeah. Anyone says to me, I said, what about your kid? Your kid going to college? Most people I say, yeah, my kid's going to college. It's like, well, who doesn't go to college then? Other people's kids. So I start out with,
Yeah.
every kid should be able to go to college. It should be accessible, it should be affordable, and it should be high quality. And I think that, you know, our college graduation rates in this country are not increasing.
Yeah.
And a second thing I would do is the access to school is really important. I think what the governor's done is really significant. But people need to be really frank and look at schools where kids are not graduating and say, what are we doing here so that kids can graduate? And when I first started working in the administration at Vanderbilt, we had like 12% of our kids would drop out after the freshman year. Now, 88% is pretty good, but I'm like, how do we lose people? And
What'd you find out?
it's very complex. It's can they afford it?
Right.
And then do they have a hook into a faculty member, into a mentor, into a friend group or something like that? Those are the two most important things. And then doing well in school.
Yeah.
If you're feeling good about yourself, it's like, hey, I'm a solid B student. So, but I think financial and kind of, and I think it's true whether a kid is 18 or whether it's a single mom who's 26. Juggling health insurance, childcare, maybe a job, and you're saying, why aren't you graduating?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like, how do you move those graduation rates up? The amount of people, now you have some college you do better.
So you're like at 87%, 93%.
Our graduation is about 93%,
Yeah,
we keep about 99% of the freshman year. But, it costs, who's there for that kid? Maybe small classes help. You get to know a professor, you get a mentor.
Yeah.
I mean, having somebody there to say, I'm not doing well today. A lot of that is their self-esteem, how they feel about themselves. Do they belong? And again, it can be an 18-year-old kid, or it can be a 26-year-old going back to school and saying, do I belong here? We all have those doubts. I go to work every day and it's like, boy, this is, I did really screw this up. I mean, okay, I'm the chancellor. I better act like I belong here because, but I think you've got to get people to graduate from college. You've got to increase that. So graduation, access, and a Marshall Plan. Those would be my three things.